Good evening. My name is Tracy Craig. I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. This is Alameda County Environmental Health Department's community meeting to discuss the status of the 3600 Alameda Avenue property. I think most of the people on this meeting know where on this meeting or attending this meeting know where that is. This is an aerial view of the site as it currently stands. Okay. We do have Spanish interpretation tonight, so I'm going to hand this over to John Primani, and he'll explain that, and then we'll get into the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. If you'd like to listen to the Spanish interpretation tonight, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. If you do not see it, you should see a three-dot icon that says More, and if you press that icon, it will bring up the interpretation feature. Once you've opened the interpretation feature, you can choose to hear the audio in either English or Spanish. If you like, you can also choose to mute the original audio by clicking that option. I'll now ask our Spanish interpreters to relay this information in Spanish.
Buenas noches. Para escuchar esta reunión en español desde una computadora, haga clic en el icono del mundo en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla de Zoom y luego seleccione Español. Si no ve el icono del mundo, haga clic en el botón más, los tres puntos, luego en Interpretación y allí verá el menú que tiene la opción para elegir Español. Si desea escuchar solamente la traducción, haga clic en Silenciar audio original.
Tracy, you're on mute.
Mute button in me. Okay, once more. My name is Tracy Craig. I'll be moderating this meeting tonight as long as I unmute myself. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We're glad you're here. The purpose of tonight's meeting really is to give an update on the 3600 Alameda Street property and answer questions that the community might have. I'd like to be very clear that this is a regulatory agency meeting. Alameda County Environmental Health Department has selected to hold this meeting and will likely be holding other ones after this to make sure that the community, in response to community concerns about dust and demolition activities. So to the right, we have a lot of agencies that are represented. We have Alameda County Environmental Health, and Dylan Rowe is the chief of Land and Water for that division. Dylan, can you just raise your hand? She's a registered professional engineer in California. We also have representation from the Regional Water Board, the US EPA, and the City of Oakland. And I'm just going to give people a moment to read all of the titles of individuals that are in attendance here from the regulatory agencies. We have a short presentation tonight. Really, first of all, we wanted to discuss how we got here, why we're having this meeting tonight, go over the concerns that we've heard about dust and stormwater, talk about on-site actions that we'll be taking to address those concerns, and then also off-site actions that we have planned. Then we'll discuss next steps and schedule, and that will be followed by the most important part, questions and answers. I think our presentation is just about 20 minutes or maybe 25, so we'll be saving the bulk of the time for to answer people's questions. If you have a question, you can do it a couple ways. You do have video privileges, so we can see your face if you want to put your camera on. You don't have audio privileges, so you'll have to raise your real hand if you have your camera on, or raise your virtual hand, which you can do, or you can type a question in the question and answer box, and we will answer it live, or we'll type the answer in there. And John, can you just remind people how to raise their virtual hand?
Yeah, there should be a option at the bottom of your screen for reactions, and in there will be the option to raise your hand. If you're joining on the phone, you can also press *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, and we welcome questions throughout the presentation. So if I see one in the box, I'll stop and we'll ask it as long as it is about the subject matter that we're talking about. Our goal tonight is to answer every question that we have, and if we're unable to answer a question tonight, we will get back to you with that information. Dylan, anything I missed here that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, all right, next slide. Okay, so once again, this is just a little bit more information on the regulatory agencies and their various roles. Kind of complicated. There's lots of different pieces with various regulatory agencies having certain things that they do, and there's not overlap sometimes. So that's why we have this many regulators coordinating for this site. So you can see Alameda County oversees subsurface environmental investigations, so that's contaminated soil, soil vapor, groundwater. US EPA is involved because there are PCBs at this site or polychlorinated biphenyls. The Regional Water Quality Control Board is involved because there's stormwater issues. Air District is involved because there's air quality issues sometimes with dust. And the City of Oakland oversees enforcement entitlement, will also be overseeing some of the stormwater issues in coordination with the Water Board. And finally is the entity that has approved an entitlement for this to allow a redevelopment project to go forward, and they'll be overseeing construction when we get to that stage. Okay, very quickly, how we got here. There was a long history for the site. It used to be used as an asphalt refinery. After that, it was a glass manufacturing facility. Prologis bought the property, and as part of that purchase and sale, they assumed responsibility for cleaning up the property to allow future reuse. Environmental investigations were conducted and very common with industrial properties. We found that that soil was contaminated with PCBs, dioxins, furans. Dylan can go into what those are. That's the soil beneath the basement and the buildings. And then also there's metals, petroleum products, chlorinated solvents. You can read the list here in groundwater and soil vapor. And soil vapor is just the vapors between grains of soil. If you can imagine a sponge and the holes between a sponge, vapors like to congregate there. So that's all that is. And sometimes some of these things like to evaporate and they congregate in these little spaces where soil particles are. In April, Prologis did receive entitlement, so that means they got the green light from the City of Oakland to redevelop this property into a warehouse. In fall, Prologis began abatement and demolition work. And in March, a community member called me and notified me of dust concerns associated with the stockpiles, which were quite high at that time. March 12th, Dylan Rowe, again, the chief of Alameda Environmental Health, and I went out and visited the site. And since that time, there's been a lot of coordination led by Dylan with all of the agencies that you saw to improve site conditions, to minimize offsite impacts, and to figure out what, if anything, has gone offsite and how we need to deal with that. And that's why we're here tonight. So I'm going to hand this over to Dylan now, and she's going to talk about everything we just saw on the agenda.
Great, thanks, Tracy, and good evening, everybody. So this is, as I discussed during the April 8th Prologis meeting about this site, I indicated that we would be holding these meetings for you from a regulatory perspective so that you understand the regulatory concerns and actions that are being taken at the site. So this is the first of those meetings. I apologize. I believe we had it scheduled earlier. I had a death in my family, so I needed to cancel it, but I don't want you to think that it doesn't mean that this site is not important. It is extremely important to environmental health and to the other agencies on this call. And I think what I just want to say, because this is an important piece, this is why we do what we do, is that I want you to keep talking about your concerns, right? I want you to, contact Tracy, that make sure that you are letting us know about your concerns, because without you notifying us of your concerns, we were not being notified of what was going on at the site. And I hope that the representation on this call of all these agencies shows that these agencies are taking your concerns seriously. They are legitimate concerns. I have been to the site, and I want you to know that the agencies are working together collectively to figure out what data needs to be collected, how the site needs to be stabilized, and evaluate any kind of risk from exposure to chemicals. And there have been a lot of things that have happened since Tracy and I went out there in March. So we're going to talk about that, but I just want to acknowledge you as participants, and you are important, and I appreciate you reaching out to us. So as Tracy said, we originally were notified of the dust complaints by some of you during the crushing of concrete from the demolished buildings. And the concrete stockpiles were really big. They were really high. They were 20 feet tall, and they were not being managed appropriately. And they did not have best management practices around stabilizing stockpiles or around stormwater migration from anything that was in the stockpiles. So and you sent us a bunch of videos, you sent us photos, and then I went to the site, and there was a lot of dust coming off of big wind gusts, coming off of these stockpiles, blowing definitely off the site. And one of the things that, since your complaints, we have been working to get these stockpiles stabilized while they get, samples have been collected to understand what was in the stockpiles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But what is true is, and you know this because you live there, wind blows every which way at this site. And you could be there for 15 minutes and have wind coming at you in every direction and big gusts. So where dust has migrated to is a big question, and we're going to be talking about how we're going to evaluate and collect some samples to understand that. Next slide, please. So there's been a lot of things that have been done, and there's a lot of things that need to be done. So in February, actually, can you go back a slide? Because I think I want to make sure that I'm not saying something wrong here. We received the complaint when? In March? Okay.
March 7th.
Okay, so go to the next slide, John. Because this in February, I don't actually know what this is information we've been given, but Prologis indicated that they had been applying water to the stockpiles Monday through Friday, and that they added an additional air monitoring station. So there's some perimeter air monitoring stations around the property to evaluate dust that is the levels of dust that blow across the site. So they had added an additional station. This was before we understood about the complaints, and you had already been having discussions with Prologis. In March, we got the complaint, and Environmental Health went out there. We directed Prologis to collect samples from the stockpiles. There had been samples collected from the uncrushed concrete prior to crushing that did not indicate that there were contaminants of concern in the concrete. But when the crushed concrete stockpiles were sampled, there are contaminants of concern, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So in March, they collected samples. They began, I think this is probably when they really began applying water to stockpiles Monday through, they extended the dates of which they were applying water to stockpiles. I'm not sure how, and these are some questions we can ask at the end of this, whether it was through water trucks or through water cannons. And then they added additional monitoring stations at our request because the monitoring stations were too far apart. In April, we had requested they start stabilizing the stockpiles immediately upon our going to the site in March. In April, Prologis did lower the stockpiles to 14 feet. The stockpile has been left uncovered at about 20 feet for 2 months. And Prologis installed a water misting system on top of the stockpiles. And then it was in April that we said those stockpiles need to be covered because there was continuing to be dust coming off of those stockpiles. So the stockpiles have been covered. It's a big step in stabilizing. They have plastic over them. They have tires over them. It is my understanding that from complaints from some of you that the plastic sheeting blew off a couple weeks ago, and that has been put back on, and some supplemental measures to keep the stockpiles covered have been put in place. Additional measures were installed at the site, including things called straw wattles, which are just straw round bales that are put around the stockpiles, and they're also around the edge of the property to keep stormwater from moving off-site. They have been spraying something called soil stabilizers. You might see it if you're looking at the site. There's a truck over near some uncovered, uncrushed concrete and brick stockpiles that is spraying a bunch of liquid on those, and that is to stabilize those stockpiles so that they do not generate dust. And then there have been some wipe samples collected from the sound wall, which I'm going to show you pictures of the sound wall in a minute. You probably know what the sound wall is. It's a 1-inch plywood fence that's anywhere between 4 and 8 feet tall. And those wipe samples were collected and analyzed mostly for PCBs at the direction of US EPA. And those samples were collected just on the top of the sound wall, just to get some kind of sense if anything was moving off site while we were asking Prologis to prepare an offsite sampling work plan. And then we asked for a human health risk evaluation to be prepared. We asked for it to include the data from offsite sampling that is pending on some of the properties and the characterization of the stockpiles. A draft has been submitted to us without that data, and we have commented on that and said that it needs to be updated with the additional data that is going to be collected. Next slide. So this is a very different picture from what it was when I went out there with Tracy on March, when you alerted us and what you saw in those previous slides. The stockpiles are stabilized. The top picture on the right shows the monitoring stations. Environmental health has had a lot of concerns about the monitoring stations actually being able to provide data about offsite migration. Those stations are about 3 to 4 feet tall. The dust that we saw blown off these 20-foot stockpiles would have gone over these stations. The sound wall, which I had been told was 8 feet tall, is actually 4 feet tall in some areas, because this is a picture, I saw it today. The site where the monitoring station is sitting on, it then drops down quite a few feet, and then the sound wall is there. So it's a pretty short sound wall. The picture on the left shows some of these straw wattles I talked about that have been put in place. Then you have a picture of somebody spraying water on what I'm assuming is the uncrushed stockpiles. And then the picture on the right is just a picture to kind of put in perspective what a wipe sample from the top of a 1-inch board might tell you. It is my opinion and environmental health's opinion that it doesn't tell you much. It does not. It gives you a little bit of data about what might have blown across and landed right there on that 1 inch, but it does not address contaminants that blew off a stockpile and were in gust and migrated off the site and then dropped past this wall. So next slide, please. So there's been a lot of analysis going on these stockpiles to try to understand what's in them, what the maximum concentrations are, what chemicals of concern are in the stockpiles, and what we might be seeing in some of the dust or stormwater that potentially has migrated off the site. This is just an example. It's a picture of these 2 giant stockpiles, or 3 stockpiles. You know, the way stockpiles are sampled is you collect a whole bunch of little samples, and then you mix them up into what are called composite samples. So there's a whole lot of sampling data that is being evaluated right now. But what is true is there are PCBs, there's petroleums, there's semi-volatile organic compounds, and there is lead above residential screening levels in these stockpiles. And so you know, there is currently a document about kind of additional analysis and rationale for whether the sampling that we have now and the results are adequate, and that is under review by all agencies right now. But there will be some additional sampling of the stockpiles conducted. Next slide, please. So I just talked about the sound wall wipe sampling results. The sound wall, the sound wall appears to me to be 8 feet tall over on a very narrow section over there on the right. But the rest of it, kind of where all the orange circles are, that sound wall is really only 4 feet above the demolition surface. And so the wipe samples were collected on the top of that 1-inch board at about 4 feet, at about a height from 4 feet. 6 out of the 23 samples contain lead above EPA dust clearance levels. No PCBs were detected, and both the environmental health and the US EPA consider these qualitative at best. They give you some indication of what might have blown across at 4 feet and landed on a very small surface. And so we are going to be requiring, and we are going to be conducting some additional off-site sampling. Next slide. So the additional on-site sampling, there's additional on-site activities. All these agencies are involved in figuring out what they are right now. Again, we're going to be analyzing or evaluating, continuing to evaluate the stockpile samples to understand the representative concentrations of contaminants. There will be collection of stormwater samples and assessment of potential impacts. Prologis is going to be preparing a plan and a pilot test if they want to continue to crush concrete on the site to show how that can be done safely without with appropriate dust controls, so that we don't have a similar issue going on in the future. There will be a perimeter windscreen that will be installed around the site. I have a document that proposes a, I don't know, maybe 16 or 20 foot tall fence. But I have been told that that Prologis is considering making a fence out of shipping containers. That's something that we can ask Prologis about tonight to be determined what's going to happen there. The intent of having that is so that there is better controls about helping to prevent the offsite migration and the impacts to the adjacent residences on this property.
Dylan, I'm going to stop you for just a moment because we have a hand raised and I'm assuming they have a clarifying question. So I think it's Dana and Rebecca, or maybe it's Dana and Rebecca. So you can go ahead and unmute we've unmuted you, and if you'll just speak, that would be great.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
My name's Rebecca. Dana's my partner. We live in the neighborhood. So basically, I know that a couple slides prior you had mentioned that some of the PCBs were found and some lead was found in the crushed concrete. So ultimately, I guess my question is the bottom line. Like, what is the bottom line? So we've been exposed to these things outside of what kind of normal levels are for X amount of months. What do specific symptoms and specific experiences with these types of things look like? What can we look out for? I'm looking for, just the bottom line.
Yep. Good questions, Dana and Rebecca. And I don't have those answers. There is a toxicologist, I believe, on this call. At some point, we can talk about that. But I think one of the things that we're doing right now is we are collecting data, because you evaluate human health risk based on concentrations, right, and exposure routes. So it's clear to me that there has been offsite migration, because I was at the site when it was very windy and there was stuff in my eyes, right? So it's very clear to me there has been. what are the impacts to you? That's what we're working on to evaluate this human health risk assessment. There's a lot of tools, but first we need to kind of understand what are the contaminant concentrations, right? Because that's one of the criteria that you use to evaluate risk. I would say if this was me, and then I'm going to let, I'm going to let a toxicologist, if we have one on the call, talk about this. But if it was me and I lived here, I would do some things that maybe I wouldn't want to do, but I would keep my windows closed. I would do that because dust coming into your house is not a good thing. And, do the things that you can do to prevent any kind of dust that has landed around your house or on your house from coming into your house. So that's a practical kind of thing. And I know that's, I'm just saying that because that is an actual thing that you can help partake in yourself. But I'm going to turn this over. I believe somebody said there was a toxicologist. I think, Sean, it was you.
I think we have Dr. Patrick Wilson on the line.
Yeah. So maybe,
and he's with the US EPA.
Yeah, and so maybe Dr. Patrick Wilson, you could talk about PCB exposure, because that's probably the biggest contaminant of, PCBs and lead.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for your question. And, I really quit. My name is Patrick Wilson. I'm the Senior Regional Toxicologist with US EPA, the Region 9 office out of San Francisco. And I also should say hello to Rebecca. I can see you there a little bit. Listen, I couldn't have said it any better than what Dylan said. We really don't have a good answer for you because we don't know the amount of these toxic chemicals that were contained in the material that's being stockpiled. And we clearly do not know the amount or the concentration of these chemicals, these bad chemicals that have made their way offsite and may have impacted offsite properties. But I think, like Dylan said, that's going to be a priority for all of the agencies to understand that dynamic. And once we understand that dynamic, we can start making judgments about health risk. So I think I'll stop there because I can't really say it much better than Dylan said it. But if you'd like to have a much more in-depth conversation about the adverse health effects that we at the federal level associate with PCBs or lead, we can make that happen. I'm not sure this is the best, venue, but we can make that happen. And I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy.
Okay. Dana, I'm going to, and Rebecca, I'll give you my phone number at the end. It's the last slide, I think, and you can call me anytime and we can follow up on that. I would say the next steps are, just so you know, though, is to do the offsite sampling, to conduct, to supplement and use that data to supplement the human health risk assessment. And from there, we can back into what, if any, kind of exposure you might have experienced. And we're doing the sampling, I believe, the offsite, we have it planned for sometime in June, and we'll have a second community meeting to share those results. Okay? All right, I'm going to move you forward, Dylan.
Okay. So these are actions to prevent this stuff in the future, right? We still have to evaluate what has happened. Now we want to make sure that when similar activities that are dust generating and are have potential chemicals of concern associated with them, when they happen in the future, that there are appropriate controls in place before it happens. So some kind of perimeter windscreen, monitoring stations that are appropriate at the height of where we're seeing dust come off at the height of a stockpile instead of at 3 or 4 feet. The Prologis is developing a plan. So if you see the site right now, all the buildings have been knocked down except the 2 closest to the tidal canal, and one of them is being knocked down. I was out there today. Those big giant smokestacks are still there. They're not smokestacks, well, whatever they are. Those giant stacks, exhaust stacks, are there. They're going to be coming down, and I was talking with the consultant today that they are working on developing a plan for how they will knock those stacks down without creating a lot of dust, but they have acknowledged that there is going to be dust. So we will be seeing a plan, and we'll be trying to figure out what that looks like and minimize risk from that. So right now, what's going on at the site is everything's just vertical. It's all just the buildings coming down. Before any hardscape, concrete, foundations, asphalt comes up, there's going to be a plan about how that hardscape, how the soil beneath the hardscape is going to be stabilized while before they do remediation and redevelopment. So we are concerned, and we are going to make sure that when all the hardscape surfaces come up, that there is not exposed soil that will be blowing and creating this problem also. So there's going to be a plan for that. And then ultimately, there's going to be a corrective action plan to address below ground contamination. Tracy, in the beginning of the call, alluded to some of the, or spoke about some of the historic land use. There's significant contamination in the ground. So what we've been talking about so far is just contamination in the building materials, but there's significant contamination in the ground that remediation, corrective actions will be developed to address one. I'll go a little bit into detail. Removal of contamination that poses a potential groundwater impact. And then removal of soil that will be required to develop the site. The site is going to be developed with a giant warehouse that has been entitled by the city of Oakland. So there's a lot of plans that need to be submitted to the agencies prior to moving forward beyond just this vertical demolition. Next slide. So the offsite assessment, and this is probably most of you are interested in this, and Dana and Rebecca were just talking about this. One of the ways that we're going to start to understand impacts are collecting samples from some offsite properties that are immediately adjacent to the site. There was the sampling was going to be conducted. Was that? May 28th? Weren't we going to do that a week ago?
We were going to do that, but we were going to do it this week. But then they didn't have the right equipment because you wanted a different type of sample.
Yeah. So the offsite sampling has been delayed a couple of times. One, because I had a death in my family. I was not in town. And I'm going to be at the properties when the samples are collected. And then we had a further delay when a lot of the agencies were talking this week, and we're trying to understand everybody's needs and data assessment, and making sure that we were collecting all the data and the methods so that we could compare apples to apples. So Prologis' consultants are currently preparing a revised work plan to address the comments. They will be submitting that shortly. And then offsite sampling will occur sometime in June. They're going to include wipe samples. So you actually take wipe samples off of surfaces of houses and structures. And then there's going to be soil and surface water samples collected at the neighboring properties. And that's where we're going to find out and get data to try to evaluate the impacts from the site. I will say that it's complicated because this area is a highly industrialized area that has a lot of sources of contamination, and many of them airborne, freeways, lots of industry. And so trying to figure out what are impacts from the site, what are impacts from other sites is a little tricky, but we're going to do our best. And then when that data is collected, those findings will be shared with the community. And they'll also be then used to update human health risk assessment so that we can talk to you, Dana and Rebecca and everybody else, about what are the exposures we're talking about here, and give you more information. Next slide. Stormwater is another big concern, and the impacts to stormwater from contamination at the site, not just from stormwater that was in contact or has been in contact with crushed concrete or any other demolition debris that was in contact with stormwater and then moved off the site, but also from the dust migration that has gone off site and then deposited in areas where then stormwater would pick it up. So Regional Water Board, City of Oakland, Environmental Health, EPA, we are all looking at documents. There have been 2 documents submitted so far that have been that are being commented on, and we're requesting revised plans. One of them is something called a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and that is really just all the controls that you have at the site to make sure that stormwater does not move off the site, and a sampling plan included in that. And then there's a different kind of sampling plan that is going to be evaluating impacts to the Oakland Tidal Canal and the surrounding community. So collecting stormwater samples or sediment samples, because there's no stormwater right now, sediment samples in stormwater kind of pathways for analysis. So those plans will be, revised plans are required to be submitted. City building department is inspecting the site weekly for, I believe, for stormwater, and city can speak to that later. I visited the site today and observed demolition that was going on and the best management practices and site conditions. And I will say that the site was in really good condition today. The wind was calm. There was a lot of demolition going. If you look to the next slide, John, this is a short video. And what I want you to notice in this, because when I first came across it, I thought what I was seeing was dust. And it was not dust, it is mist coming from that water cannon. So the dust was being controlled well in this moment. But again, this is a moment in time, and we expect dust to be controlled all the time. So we want to continue to hear about your observations. But Prologis and their contractors have done considerable work to correct deficiencies and stabilize the site. And there is going to be more work that is going to be done to do that. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through all of this. It kind of runs through different plans that have been submitted, timelines, kind of gives you an idea that there is a chunk of work coming up in June and July. A really important piece is the site characterization report. There have been a large number of samples of soil and groundwater and soil vapor collected at this site, and we are waiting for a site characterization report that will be submitted in a couple of weeks. And that's going to really help inform what's in the ground, what the measures are going to be for remediation and for management during redevelopment to ensure that the community is not exposed to those contaminants when soil starts being excavated. And so I won't go through all of this, but there's a key note there that the updated health risk evaluation is scheduled to be submitted June 25th. That date may have to change because I don't think they're going to get out and get the sampling data until June. So it's probably more likely July. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy.
Sure, thank you. John, if you can just go back really quickly, I just want to stress one thing. The last line there is communications, and so we're going to redouble our efforts to make sure the community knows from a regulatory perspective what's going on. Dylan mentioned a couple of events that, of course, the community would be interested in, taking down those stacks, the ultimate cleanup plan for the property, and we do have public engagement milestones around those, and we also expect that we'll continue to have virtual meetings to update you as we get new data. So just wanted to say that. And our last slide before we open it up for questions. There is my name. There's my cell phone number. You can text me, call me. It says 24/7, and that is the truth. You can call me in the middle of the night if there's something going on at the site that you're concerned about or is keeping you up. You can also email me at any time. I'm very, very responsive, and we'll get right back to you, and I can get you in touch with whoever you want on this from the regulatory agencies. Also, all the documents for this site, 3600 Alameda Avenue, are on the Water Board's website, and that includes Alameda County documents that are submitted to Alameda County. It's called GeoTracker. You can see right there how to get to it on the web, and then you would just punch in the address and look at the community involvement page. So lots of very technical documents on there. And I think that is all, but I do encourage people to call me if they want. And now we'd like to open this up for questions and answers. Couple ways to do that. One, you can raise your virtual or real hand. Two, you can use the question and answer box. Three, if you hate to speak in public, even at virtual meetings, you can call me after the meeting and ask me any kind of questions, and I'll make sure that you get the answers. So with that, I am going to ask you to take a picture. This presentation will also be on the website, and a copy of this community meeting, a video, there'll be a link at GeoTracker for that as well as a summary of the meeting that will go up by tomorrow. So if you want to get that information there, please do so. If you want to just take a picture of this with your phone, you can also do that. And I think I will open it up for questions now. John, if you want to take the slide down so we can see people, that would be great. Okay, Dana and Rebecca, please.
Yeah, just a question about, I know that the results you all shared that you would be sharing the results with us. Was it going to be this kind of forum? Is it going to be the GeoTracker? Or how will the results be shared? And also maybe thinking about the greatest possible equitable way for them to be shared, which probably isn't going to be virtual or in a forum like this. So I just wanted to know your thoughts.
Right. So first of all, thank you for the question, and I am open to suggestions. So I completely understand that expecting people to get on a computer at 6 o'clock at night doesn't work for a lot of people, especially unhoused people that might be nearby. So we would likely host another meeting like this because it does work for a certain constituency. If you have other ideas, we're happy to go door to door and hand out information. We're happy to piggyback off of community groups. Last night we had a meeting where we work with communities for a better environment. And I hate to ask you to do the work, but it's your community. So if you have some ideas, just tell me and I'll do all the rest of the heavy lifting.
And just to follow up on that, Dana and Rebecca, so all the data will be in reports that are on GeoTracker. So there's like technical documents. If you want to read those, right, and digest them, they will be technical, but they will be available to you. It is our goal to help kind of digest and interpret some of that for you because it is pretty technical. But if you want to get into some really technical detail, they are available on GeoTracker.
Okay. And then I'm just going to offer you up, Dylan, if you want to have a smaller meeting to discuss something specific to you, or if you have a smaller constituency that you represent or people that want to get together, I can set up a meeting with Dylan to go through data for you that's specific to you. So there's not, unfortunately, there's not a great one size fits all, but we really would like to get that information out to people. And we will have a meeting where we actually shorten it and kind of give you digestible bites, but the reports themselves all up on GeoTracker. Other questions?
I'm just going to follow up really quickly, Dana. It's our goal to help to be transparent about this. And I know that this is, we can't give you any answers today, but we are looking at it, right? We are asking for the information, collecting that data, and we will tell you about that data, right? And so however that is, whatever we need to do, we will work to do that, to disseminate that information to you, okay? Oh, it looks like somebody has their hand up, Tracy.
Right, Alex just raised his hand, so. Hi, Alex.
I was waiting because I didn't want to monopolize this because I could ask a whole lot of questions, I'm sure, but and I apologize because I came in a little late. So
No
I may have
problem.
missed some stuff, but one question I had unrelated to the contaminants issue is, did I hear you say that a warehouse has been approved that's the future planned land use for this area?
That is correct. A warehouse has it's been approved by the city of Oakland. Yeah.
Peterson, would you like to address that?
We have somebody from planning with the city
Yeah,
of
how you
Oakland
doing?
here.
Pete Woolman from City of Oakland. Yeah, so they came in a few years back and started that process. We did a whole EIR that was published, and the project was approved. God, time flies. I think it was late 23 or early 24.
And that's going to occupy the full scope of the space?
Yeah, there was a provision. Part of the project involves them pulling Alameda Avenue inbound into their site and expanding the Bay Trail. And we wanted to have like some future possibility of like a commercial space. So they actually did carve out a piece of the corner for where 37th Avenue will cut through to Alameda Avenue for a potential future commercial development there. So there could be like restaurants or other commercial uses that would tie in with the Bay Trail.
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite
But
follow.
the remainder of the site is going to be the warehouse facility, yes.
And then the commercial uses are a potential future use that's going to be determined later?
Correct.
So the warehouse just won't occupy that space for now. Okay. Some of the environmental reviews, it sounded like, again, I may have just missed this, but like the stormwater pollution prevention plan, that's not just now after the fact being considered, right? I mean, that should have been done up in advance.
So I'll let other people talk after, but most people don't have the history on this. There was a SWIP that was prepared for the site, as part of the demolition. One of the issues on this demolition site is that many of the stormwater controls were tied into the buildings that got demolished. So collection of stormwater and downspouts that then went into some subsurface structures and, moved it into stormwater infrastructure. When those buildings were demolished, so was that infrastructure. And so one of the problems is when we came out to the site, stormwater was not, SWIP measures were not in place, not the way they should be. And so an amended SWIP has been submitted, and it is dated April 25th. And that is something that is currently being reviewed now that we've got all these agencies looking at this, what's going on. It's currently being reviewed and commented on. There will be another amended SWIP. There are deficiencies in it. And one of the things as we go forward is the SWIP does talk about if there are changes in site conditions, the SWIP will be amended. Well, that didn't happen, right? So
Right.
trying to correct deficiencies so that that doesn't happen in the future. And we've got Regional Water Board, we got City of Oakland on this call that can talk if they want to about that. But there's a lot of stuff that happened that shouldn't have happened, right? And so now we're trying to understand the impacts of that, right? Of what happened, and make sure that as we go forward, that stuff is corrected.
Right, because it was obviously anticipatable that those structures were going to come down and that it was going to change the dynamics of the stormwater.
Yeah.
Okay. And then exposure pathways. I mean, you've got so many different communities in different directions from this, people that are exposed in different ways. How are you thinking about trying to communicate to people what they need to be concerned about and how they can respond?
Well, again, I think the people that you've got 4 agencies here. You've got US EPA, right, with PCBs. You got environmental health. You've got City of Oakland with stormwater. You got Regional Water Board with stormwater. There's a lot of exposure pathways. The biggest exposure pathways in my mind are through dust inhalation, right? Or direct contact from deposition of this stuff in somebody's backyard or on their windowsills. And then certainly stormwater contact, right? So not just stormwater that moved off the site that is potentially contaminated, but stormwater that is going to come into contact if dust blew off the site and then settled, and then it's in stormwater paths. So I think where we are right now, Alex, is a lot of data collection, right? And the agencies, we've got it took a bunch to figure out how to get all these agencies coordinated, but they are coordinated. And sampling is going to take place, and then we're going to evaluate what those risks are, and kind of that's yet to be determined. We do not know what those risks are.
So you mentioned 4 agencies. I think you mentioned EPA, you mentioned the Water Board. Was it County Environmental Health, maybe?
County Environmental Health and City of Oakland.
The City of Oakland, but you didn't mention DTSC, you didn't mention the Air Pollution Control District.
Air Pollution Control District is part of it. DTSC is not part of this site. Environmental Health is the oversight agency for subsurface remediation, which we're not even in the ground yet. We're above demolition, right? So there's Environmental Health Certified Unified Program Agency that's involved in facility closure of the old glass factory. There's the City of Oakland that's got demolition. There's City of Oakland that's got stormwater, different pieces of stormwater. There's Regional Board that has different pieces of stormwater, right? There's US EPA that has PCB, and so we've been talking about PCBs in concrete, but there was a big PCB release at this site. There was a fire during the operation of the glass factory, and there were PCBs in the basement. And so Sean Garral is on this call, and he could talk about it, but there is a corrective action. Actually, there has been PCB remediation, and then there's going to be capping of remediation in soil. So there's both subsurface contamination. This new piece that's kind of we're dealing with now is the stuff that appears to be in concrete and crushed brick that was not identified by wipe sampling and chip sampling of uncrushed concrete.
Has the Air Pollution Control District done modeling of the airflow patterns in this area?
Do we have somebody from BachMed on here?
We don't.
Okay, so it's a little bit like wrangling some agencies to come to the table. I think it's a good question, and I think that's something we should bring up. I appreciate that. I appreciate that comment. They have really not participated in interagency discussions, and I think they need to.
Yeah, I mean, airflow modeling is super complicated, I know, and obviously it's changing all the time, but I expect that there are prevailing patterns, and there are communities that are more likely to be downwind and less likely to be downwind. And it seems like we should know that to the extent that we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. It's a good comment.
I'll stop for a while and let other people talk.
Yeah, let's see if anybody else wants to ask a question, and then please feel free. It's very courteous of you too. Anybody else? Okay, well, please feel free to ask another question then.
Floor is yours, Alex.
Yeah, this is my area. In case it wasn't obvious, I'm a land use environmental lawyer.
For what agency? Or ICCCC legal, so.
Yeah, sorry, the California Coastal Commission.
Okay.
And I live in Alameda, so I live right over the water
Rich.
from here.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks. And I walk by. I used to walk by the recycling facility every day on my commute to BART, and I still walk by it now a lot of the time. So, you know, from my personal standpoint, my guess is that I don't have a whole lot of exposure because I'm probably upwind and a little ways away. But I do walk by it every day, and I don't have a good sense for how bad the contamination is. And then, you know, beyond my just personal concern, my concern about the communities that are closer to there, I want to try to understand how this is all playing out. I'm not sure what other questions I have at the moment. because I came in a little late and I'm still just kind of processing all this information. And, you know, my guess is that it's going to be really difficult to try to convey to people. I mean, when you talk about things like acceptable exposure levels, you know, for
Mhm.
foods, you know, you think about amounts that you're eating per day, but here you've got people who are going to be exposed through multiple different pathways at multiple different intensity levels based on where they are and which way the wind's blowing and what their interaction is with the water and other things. So it's kind of a little overwhelming me trying to figure out how to get this information in a meaningful way to people.
Right.
Well, hopefully, Alex, you know, well, not hopefully, we are going to get data. There is going to be data, and and there's a human health risk assessment, and I agree. How you take data and how you do the stuff that we all do and say, you know, you don't have to worry about it, and now, or you do need to worry about it. How you convey that to people
Yeah,
is, I think, is challenging. I've never seen it conveyed very well by any agency, actually. And so it's going to be, I think we need to see the data and we need to see what's going on. And you know, we need to challenge ourselves to communicate it. I was, you know, I shouldn't say well, actually, I haven't. I've been in a lot of meetings where it's been very difficult to take a very technical subject and get it out of a, you know, a regulator or a toxicologist or somebody and put it in layperson's terms of what does this mean to me? And I think that's a challenge we all face. It's
for
what
sure.
we wish we didn't do. It's what we wish we didn't have to do, but we have to do it here because there has been potential exposure. So I think we get the data. I appreciate you being on the call, and I think your comments are really thoughtful. And I hope that you continue to be involved in this and provide some input.
One last thing, and then I want to turn it over to Dana, but has there been thoughts about, I mean, I haven't looked at the SWIP and I don't know what's in it, but have there been thoughts about detention basins and swales and things around the perimeter to catch all of that stormwater?
There's big detention basins during development, right? So there's these two pieces. There's a demolition, then there's the remediation, which is something very different, right? And then there's the development. So the development has their SWIP, you know, their detention basins, which I'm not quite clear how they're going to work with the remediation because we haven't seen the remediation plan. But I think that the agencies involved in the stormwater that are just really getting their hands on it right now are going to be making comment on that, on BMPs that need to be put in place and correcting deficiencies that are not there. For an example, the SWIP that was amended, and I had this comment during a meeting yesterday, was there was no, actually it wasn't the SWIP, it was the offsite sampling. And there was no proposed collection of sampling along Fruitvale. And because it said that there was a wall there. And I thought, I've been at the site and I said, there's actually, and it was interesting to go out and kind of see what people were talking about. There is a wall right next to the sidewalk, but there is a big open vegetated expanse that the site does not have any controls on the edge, and it just drops down into that, which then it works its way right down to the tidal canal. So I think that there are going to be some discussions about this. And I don't know, Maggie or Terry, you want to talk about that at all? Or just to be determined?
I think Dana has a question too. So maybe TBD.
That's fine. Yeah, let's go to Dana.
Right. And Dana, do you have another question, or Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm Rebecca, by the way.
Oh, you are. Excuse me.
It's all good. I know
Nice to meet you.
we were both on the screen, both of our names were
I
in.
will not make that mistake again.
No worries. So yeah, I think for me, my background is in community engagement and social services in general. And so I was just wondering about because I think I heard Dylan say that kind of taking a lot of the, for lack of a better term, legalese and kind of breaking it down into something that lay folks can understand definitely can be really difficult and time consuming. So I think my question is focused in, what does your community engagement strategy and or team look like to be able to kind of make things more digestible and then make things be able to be better shared out in a way that is understandable and clear, as far as, for example, hey, the normal range of lead in soil is 40 parts per million, for example, and currently what we have found is 900 parts per million. And so when you see these types of, skyrocketed levels, this and this and this are specific health risks, and here are specific ways to be able to combat those risks. For example, closing your windows and X and Y and Z.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna, since you have a background in community engagement and you clearly are talking the language that we need to talk, I think that we bring you into our community engagement here as we get the data and we start to digest the data on a technical level, and we start to try to figure out how do we talk to people about it. I think you should be part of our team. You live in this neighborhood, you are concerned about it, and you have, I think you are like having, I'm going to call you a guinea pig. You're kind of a guinea pig, right? If we can explain some information to you, maybe we can explain it to the bigger community. So I don't know if you'd be interested in that, Rebecca, but wait, Dana, Rebecca, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Rebecca. If you would be interested in being part of that, I think that'd be great. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? Rebecca?
You're muted.
Yeah.
That was a thumb up. Okay.
Okay.
I would ask you, Rebecca, if you would put your if you want to share your email, put it in the Q&A, and I will follow up with you. Right. And I would just say Dylan and I have worked together. Like, this is our community involvement team, Dylan, Tracy, and John. We've worked together for a long time on a lot of hard projects, and are fairly good at explaining risk. Although you have to thread a needle, right? Because you don't want to dumb it down so much that people don't understand, but you don't want to talk up here where people aren't getting it. So I'm always interested in getting help and also making more connections.
Yeah.
Right. Other questions, concerns, thoughts?
And Rebecca, just so that you know, Tracy is your point of contact for me, but Tracy has a direct line to me. Okay.
I do.
And she has a line to these other people, but she has a direct line to me. I've made that commitment to the community. And so if you want to talk, and I have a really good relationship with all these people on this call, all the regulators. I appreciate this team. So, if you want more information, you want to talk more about stuff, you want to collaborate with us about dissemination of information, this is what community involvement is. It's not just us talking to you, it's us engaging with you and trying to figure out how we do better.
Other questions or concerns? Alex? All right.
This is Terry. Oh, I'll turn on my video. Can I say something about stormwater?
Yeah, if you'll introduce yourself first, though, Terry, and what your role is, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm Terry Fashing. I'm the division manager for watershed and stormwater at the City of Oakland Public Works. Our group doesn't inspect private construction sites. That duty is handled by Department of Planning and Building. But I did want to say that the city requires this developer, and requires them to require their construction contractor to make sure that this project is covered by the water board's construction general permit. And, so the city, requires that they follow their stormwater pollution prevention plan and that they provide evidence of compliance to the city. And so, the city is improving we're inspecting once a week at this point. and making improvements to that. It was a clear requirement of this developer to to completely comply with the construction general permit. So that is something that was not happening. And, you know, the requirement to update the SWIP, that is the requirement of the consultants assigned to keep an eye on this. So there should be a qualified stormwater pollution prevention plan practitioner overseeing the construction and the implementation of that SWIP every single day at the site. And so I have brought this up with the developer and stated that, you know, that QSP, they call it, needs to be totally on top of this, following the SWIP, updating it as needed, moving forward. And so I just wanted to mention that everything that's been discussed about stormwater should be covered by this, and that is why a new SWIP is being developed. I am actually going to review it. I normally don't review SWIPs for private construction, but I am going to review this one. And I'm working very closely with Department of Planning and Building to just make sure that we're on top of conducting effective inspections moving forward. And there are standard conditions of approval that apply to this project. And there are very clear air quality requirements. So that is something that is a public document that can be reviewed. So you all can see what the city did require and was requiring of this particular project, you know, and so I just thought I would mention that. And you know, we are working to hold this, working collaboratively with all of the different regulatory agencies to hold this developer, you know, accountable.
Okay, thank you, Terry. All right, we had our meeting scheduled till 7, and I think that we've gotten most of the people that wanted to speak. John, if you'd throw my number back up there, I just want to give people another outlet just in case. If anybody in attendance has any questions that they wish they had asked, something they think about at 2 in the morning, please feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I'll make sure that you get the information that you're looking for. We will be hosting another meeting sometime, I think probably in July, after we do the offsite sampling and we have more concrete information to provide about potential offsite impacts. So we'll make, if you would like to get that, we have mailed before, we also email, but if you'd like to get a direct email, please take this opportunity to put your email in the question and answer box. And other than that, I'd like to thank everybody for their time. John, I'm going to give people just a minute to type emails if they're interested.
Yep.
And I would say thank you for your time and feel free to drop off.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Nice meeting you, Rebecca. Nice meeting you,
Thank you.
Alex. And
Bye.
you too, Dana, wherever you were.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye
Rebecca.
now.